Let's continue our discussion on what's ahead for the country as of tomorrow with regard to the cliff. Congressman Scott Rigell, welcome. Also joining us is AEI economist Philip Swagel. Gentlemen, welcome. Congressman, to you first. You're in favor of raising taxes, although you signed Grover Norquist's pledge to not raise taxes. You're now rebuking it. That said, as you watch these final negotiations, we're hearing a framework of a deal, $450K for joint filers being the cutoff. Which classification of earners do you ultimately believe will see their taxes increase?
Well, Lori, it's very difficult to understand where we go from here because I haven't seen the agreement. And when I look at what my colleagues really objected to and what was referred to as Plan B, it's difficult to understand why this plan is anything other than a worse plan. There aren't any real spending cuts as I see. So I'm going to have a difficult time with it myself, but I'll wait until make a final decision until I see it.
I'm sure. Phil Swagel, to you now. Let's talk about this issue of spending cuts. You raise a wonderful point in that there are so many federal expenditures that are exempt from budget cuts, the entitlements, also the interest payments on the national debt. That said, we need bigger entitlement reform. And I know this is the big picture issue here, but any of these cuts they're negotiating right now to avoid the cliff, I mean, they're not meaningful. So are you at all optimistic that we can get to the discussion on the meaningful entitlement reform?
I'm optimistic in that we've avoided the worst part of the cliff. But I think we've seen the red line for the president is that he really can't talk about entitlement reform. His party is really pretty locked in against it. And we've seen that with the change in the CPI, for example. So I think that's going to be the difficulty, is allowing the president to have his moment today and then move on to talk about the real fiscal danger of out-of-control spending.
Congressman, what do you think the best case scenario is from where we stand today? How will we wake up? What will we see tomorrow morning on the new year? In terms of taxes,
well, I wish I could tell you exactly, but I think there's just a 50-50 chance that anything will pass before midnight tonight. Look, to be able to process, to review this bill in such a short amount of time, it's really not fair to legislators, I don't think, in that sense, the rank and file, those of us who are not privy to the first-line discussions
right.
and
okay, let me stop you right there
negotiations.
for time. And there's a lot of breaking news right now. We're finally getting some numbers with this threshold on the wage earner, some of the other issues, unemployment extension, the doc fix, the AMT patch, all of these things. What are you willing to sign before the new year's up?
Well, what I'm looking for is a comprehensive agreement that actually, and I've been calling for this all year, that reduces spending, which is the principal threat to our country. But I am a Republican who's made the empirical case that revenues have to rise through tax reform and growth. And I haven't seen that leadership from the president. That's not a partisan statement. It's just the best assessment of the facts as I see it. He's not leading.
Yeah, we got to be realistic here, though. You know, the spending cuts that need to happen to make a difference, they're not going to happen today.
Well, no, and if you look at his statement about the debt limit, some of my colleagues are saying, well, let's use the debt limit as the real lever. The president's already made clear that he's not going to negotiate around the debt limit. So to me, the time is right now with respect to these cuts and rates that where we have, what little leverage we have, it's right now.
Phil Swagel, let you weigh in on all of this. People have said that economists suggest that concern about the fiscal cliff has already done damage. The economy, according to the COB, is seriously at risk of falling back into recession, negative growth in the new year. Do higher taxes, is that in a way a death knell for the economy, or is it just the whole picture, the whole kit and caboodle, if you will, of increased
right.
taxes, increased spending, and no meaningful deficit reduction?
Right. I mean, we're seeing some effect already. You see that in the numbers on consumer confidence, on the Christmas season spending, in business investment and hiring. Look, the higher taxes, it's not the end of the republic. It's bad for growth, but we can, we can still have a strong economy. But I think we do need to deal with the uncertainty of what are taxes going forward. And this cliff deal, it's a short-term deal. I think we need the leadership that the congressman was talking about, and I wish it were there. So I agree with him on what we really need going forward.
Congressman Rigell, one last comment from you as to confidence in Washington. As you know, Americans are basically fed up with this wheeling and dealing in Washington and no compromise. Is there anything you can say to sort of reinforce our confidence in you?
Well, in the institution itself, this place is filled with members of Congress who come from gerrymandered districts, both Republicans and Democrats. So in some sense, it's really no surprise that we are where we are. And long term, we've got to address this gerrymandered district situation. When someone comes from an R20 or a D20 district, they're not only are they not rewarded for finding common ground, they're punished for it. And I think that's evidenced in why we're at this cliff here, in a tough spot.
Congressman Rigell and Philip Swagel from the AEI. Gentlemen, thanks to you both, and Happy New Year.
Thank you.
We said